Yes, we are live. Please start.
Wait for a minute. Hello and a very good evening to the workshop series organized by MNET. MNET has put together a series of workshops for teachers and educators by leading experts in the field as part of ELT to explore some of the core competencies using innovative tools and techniques. My warm welcome to the speaker, Dr. R. Purnima, and all the educators who have gathered from different parts of India and different corners of the world. Your participation ignites and motivates us to push for better planning. And what binds us is a passion, a common passion to be effective teachers. Today's workshop is a practical practice of using Google Classroom in the teaching and the learning process. I thank the speaker for sharing her knowledge to all teacher fraternity who are struggling to choose between the tools in this pandemic time. So without wasting much time, let me begin the session. Today's workshop is on use of Google Classroom for teaching and learning. Mumbai Network of English Teachers webinar on Google Classroom for teaching and learning. The field of education has had a rapid digital shift in the recent times. Technology has transformed the way in which we communicate and transmute knowledge systems. Educators are creating impactful learning experience more than ever before through gamification, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. While technological advancements are entering into our classroom, some symptoms continue to require one's attention. The classroom. As much as use of e-tools and application is important, setting up virtual classroom is a must. The Google Classroom is a product exclusively made for educators to manage their sessions, resources, and teaching experiences. It's a unique platform that promotes collaboration and effective communication between educators, learners, parents, and administrators. Through Google Classroom, educators are in a click away from curating lesson plans, resources, activities, projects, tasks, assessment, performance reports, and feedback. In this session, we will take you a step ahead and make you walk through a portal which will enable you to create your very own classroom for your students online. And to talk about this, we have Dr. R. Purnima, and she is a certified CELTA teacher and has received her doctorate in the field of applied linguistics. She has presented her research at various national and international level portals and has published research articles too. She has cleared all 3 modules of the Teaching Knowledge Test, TKT, University of Cambridge with merit, and has also earned the Business English Certified Prelims, University of Cambridge. She has completed courses in pedagogical research from Harvard University's a Graduate School of Education, MIT, and a number of other renowned universities. She has received an exclusive badge on the Microsoft Educator community for her engagement with educators from around the world. Dr. R. Purnima has been associated with the British Council as a British Council School Ambassador, BCSA, since 2015. Her work involves mentoring, teacher training, and instructional designing for the Connecting Classroom initiatives. She has been a part of International School Award Program as an assessor and has supported schools from India and Nigeria. She has trained advanced courses of the Core Skill Program to early career educators from the UK for an exchange program. She is also a subject expert for the Researchers Connect program and has trained doctoral researchers at IIT Ropar. She is also the Master Resource Person for SCRT Andhra Pradesh and has been a part of the Comprehensive Learning Enhancement Program, CLEP, and the Spoken English for Teachers program. We are very happy to have her here once again, and thank you, ma'am, and welcome you again for this session, for this practical session.
A very good evening to all of you who have joined us today from different parts of the country or probably from different parts of the world. A special thank you to Mr. Nadeem Khan and Madam Renu Dhotre for doing a wonderful job at this point of time. I'm super excited and overwhelmed.
Purnima, you're not audible.
Am I audible now, ma'am?
No, no, dear.
Now?
No.
Yes.
Is it fine? All right. So I'm super excited and thrilled to be back for the second time around. And I'm hoping that we have a productive engagement. Given the time that we have like for 1 hour, I'm going to try my level best to make it as engaging and at the same time give you ample input in terms of creating your very own classroom. Renu ma'am, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Fantastic. So you must be aware of the Zoom portal. So if in case you want me to stop or you want me to probably present a slide all over again, do give me a shout out. I'll have a
Purnima,
close
ma'am,
watch.
you're not audible.
Renu ma'am, Purnima ma'am is very much clearly audible.
Okay, fine.
I just took off my earphones. I'll put it back again then. All right. So if in case you have any questions or you want me to stop over, do let me know in the chat.
Yes, it's clear.
To the session. Thank you, ma'am. So in today's session, we'll be looking at creating our own virtual classroom exclusively through Google. There has been an introduction on me, given by Renu ma'am. But a quick mention on the picture that is given right here. I've been using this picture. I used it earlier as well, just to showcase how passionate educators are, irrespective of their time constraints, schedules, and no matter what life throws at them, they definitely have their smiles on their face. Now, the teachers that you see on screen are hardworking teachers involved in a government project in Delhi, soon after a 9-hour shift of training right before an exam. So I'm hoping that towards the end of this 1 hour, I can get to see a wonderful smile on all your faces, because I'd request you all to give me a selfie pose towards the end. We'll have a group photograph towards the end. So in short, I've been working with teachers for almost a decade now, exclusively with low resource classrooms in India and first generation learners. With that being said, I think we should go right into the session. So in the chat box, try to reflect on the words that come to your mind when you think of teaching in the classroom. It's an open-ended question, so you could like think of anything at all. I've given you all a couple of hints on the screen. Maybe you could just reflect on it. Use the comment section. I'll have a look at your responses. Mr. Santosh says, innovation. Absolutely. It's the need of the hour, isn't it? Any more responses? Questions. I think questions play a very important role in terms of tapping in those higher order thinking skills. Differentiation. I think that's something that is a must in our classrooms, especially when we speak about learner-centric learning experiences. Problem solving, language games, active learning, equity. Shalini says presence of mind. Kranti Priya says learner needs, absolutely. Learner-centric activities. Sarayu ma'am has said inclusion. Tusha ma'am says interactive. Wonderful. So there are a couple of theoretical understandings that I can get a feel of with the responses that you've given. Now, if you look at in terms of how are the engagements as such? Do you plan your engagement as group activities or pair activities, individual activities? If you could think on those lines as well. So do you all have quizzes in your classroom? Bharati ma'am says involvement. Yes, I mean, that's something that is irrespective of what platform we're using, whether it's online or offline, involvement reflects directly how successful our learning experiences are. Yes, Stanley, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you mentioned blended learning. I think blended learning is something that we're all looking at. I think Sarayu ma'am had a wonderful session right before this session on blended learning. So there's a lot of thinking going on in this area. So with all these tools and applications that we have at hand and all the materials that we're generating almost every single day, How are we managing all of it? So probably in a month from now, if I were to ask, so what did you do in this particular week? Will you be able to give me a response to it? If I were to ask you, how did your students perform? Were they engaged? What were the strategies that you used? So to think of all those areas and given a portal online to sort of not just save them, but also use it later on is something that we're going to look at through Google Classroom. Which leads us to the session outcomes for today. So in today's session, we look at the scope of Google Classroom. So what exactly can educators do? How can they engage their learners? And are there any fellow collaborators other than their students itself? We'll also look at the setup and the utility. So is it just about teaching online? So what else that we do otherwise? So quick check back to the responses that you're given on the chat box in terms of differentiation, inclusion, bringing in questions into the picture, all of that. How are we going to utilize the Google Classroom to do that? We'll also look at the features. So since you must be aware of a number of tools already, how could we embed them in our Google Classroom to create a full task, like right from the beginning to the end, and right at the end, you have this assessment and you give your feedback, and how do you do those kind of transactions? So these are the areas that we're going to quickly look at in the next few minutes. So we'll start off with what is a Google Classroom. Quite literally, it is a classroom. It is a classroom online. So with the given change and the shift and the need to create a virtual classroom, it doesn't just end through a Zoom engagement or a Microsoft Teams engagement. There are a number of learning management systems, just like Google. So you have the Microsoft that offers one, you have something called as Talent LMS, Blackboard. All these products are just like Google Classroom, a learning management system. A learning management system often offers educators to create a course right from the beginning, break it down to modules, bring in assessments, assignments, track the participants, communicate with them, allow participants to communicate with each other. So Google Classroom was created exclusively for educators, specifically for educators coming from schools. It is a virtual classroom setup. Yes, you can keep a tab of all your students, segregate them according to their needs. We spoke about inclusion and differentiation. So we'll look at how we can differentiate our instruction through Google Classroom in a while. But you could have a setup not just for attendance, but more in terms of profiling them, looking closer into their needs, their styles, what are their strengths and the areas that need improvement. It is Google Classroom is free of cost for educators. If you're a teacher in a school or a trainer or facilitator, or you just conduct workshops, you could use a Google Classroom. It's free of cost for the institution as well. So on Google Classroom, it is not mandatory that you need to belong to an institution to create a classroom. You could create one even otherwise. The minimum requirement for creating an account is an account on Google itself. So quickly in the chat box, do you all have an account on Google? If yes, just type in a yes, or else just type in a no. All right, I've got 4 yeses as it is. Oh, fantastic. So majority of you have an account on Google. Did you know that by default, you have access to a Google Classroom? Yes. So as soon as you have an account on Google, thank you so much for your responses. Thank you. All right. So just as you can access YouTube through your Google account, you can access Google Classroom too. So towards the end of this evening or end of this day, you can set your own virtual classroom. We'll look at how to do that in a bit. Moving on. So how can you access the Google Classroom? Firstly, you can access it as a portal through your desktop, through the address that is flashed on the screen, www.classroom.google.com. Else, you could download the application that is available for both Android and iPhone users. It's called the Google Classroom app itself. Now, irrespective of you being the learner or the teacher or the administrator, you can access it through one of these ways. The portal itself is available through your mobile phone, a tablet, a laptop, and also a desktop. So look at how inclusive it makes, tech inclusive the platform itself is, and how responsive it is. So whenever we speak about learning management systems, there's a mental checklist that every educator needs to keep in mind in terms of how cost effective it is. So let's have a quick check on the checklist itself. I spoke about cost effectiveness in terms of will you be able to afford it, and will your students be able to afford it? Yes, because it's absolutely free. Is it a responsive interface? Absolutely, because you could sign in through multiple kinds of devices. How is the interface itself? From my experience, it has been extremely user-friendly, and you would be getting a taste of it in a bit as well. So these are a few checklists that if you think of beyond Google Classroom, another LMS, you might have to keep in mind. Right. So on Google Classroom, there are two types of accounts that are offered. Now, supposing you belong to an educational institution or a university, your institution must sign in for the G Suite for Education portal. Simply because once you sign in, the account offers you multiple privacy settings that you can give your learners to. On Google, most of you must be experiencing that your learners often use their parents' account because you need to be above 18 years of age. So it's better that when you're part of an institution, you sign in through the G Suite account simply because they generate a username and ID. Their data is saved in a protected way. And also there are other threats of advertisements and clickbaits that you can completely negate on this portal. Now, supposing you do not belong to an educational institution and you're an independent consultant or a trainer, you could still create one. However, you wouldn't have access to the G Suite for Education. G Suite also offers a number of other tools and trainings for teachers. So if you're part of an institution, you create an account and ask your administrators to create one as well. So with that being said, we can move on to, okay, Sarayu ma'am thank you, Sarayu ma'am. Fantastic. So on the Google Classroom, you could collaborate in a number of different ways. Firstly, you can collaborate with fellow teachers. Let me just have a look at the chat because I can see if there's some activity there. Yeah, absolutely. MS Teams is also an LMS. I think a number of schools today are using Google MS Teams. MS Teams also has a similar profile. However, Google has a number of tools that you can make use of as well. So yeah, when we going back to the slide, collaborations. So teachers can collaborate with each other. Supposing a geography teacher wants to collaborate with a mathematics teacher or science with an English teacher, you can combine the learning experience on this platform as well. Of course, you can collaborate with your students, get them to work together as well. So there's collaboration among students and as well as from your end. Parents and guardians too have a stake on the Google Classroom through the reports that the classroom generates for every assessment or assignment. You could give feedback about their children at whenever you wish, like after an assessment or a session. And the school, of course. Once you have a G Suite, your school plays an important role in terms of giving access entry to students and teachers as well. So these are a number of areas that you could look at when you're choosing your LMS and which is offered by Google Classroom. So when we spoke about teachers, Sunanda says, all right. Sunanda ma'am, you've touched upon creating a school website. I'm not the best at it to give you the understanding on creating one right from the scratch. So we look at now at Google Classroom exclusively. Right, so what do teachers do? What can teachers do? Teachers can create multiple classes. Supposing you're handling 2 grades, you could have multiple classes on the Google platform. You can design learning experiences through resources, assignments, and assessments. You can designing learning experiences using e-tools. So one of the best facilities that is available on the Google platform is the fact that you can embed many third-party applications directly into your lesson plans. So that way learners don't have to be like confused as to where to go for this particular activity or what has to be done next. You can generate performance reports. It's really nice to get a quiz on Kahoot, but how do we understand if learning has actually happened? We can also schedule sessions. In fact, if I'm having a session now, I can schedule a test through Kahoot the next week, and it'll pop up on my learner screen in the time that I have scheduled it for. You could provide differentiated instruction, which I'll give you an example of in a bit. You can create an inclusive space. One of the best, one of the boons of having a virtual classroom is the fact is, gone are the days where our learners are stuck with a notebook or an A4 size sheet to do a presentation, at the most a cardboard perhaps. With the number of tools that are available today, learning is becoming a lot more inclusive. Let's say your learners are not into writing, you could give them an option to present a song, or you can give them an option to do a video presentation and probably an illustration, or come up with a software program through scratch. So giving the tools equals to the number of ways they can represent their understanding of knowledge and the construction that has happened behind it. It is also a brilliant platform to collaborate with fellow teachers, like I said, like supposing a maths teacher is working on geometry and a civics teacher is talking about how cities are made. So probably a project which involves designing your own city using geometrical concepts. So you could think on those lines of creating interdisciplinary projects online as well. Definitely you can reflect, or inculcate reflective practice. It is very important, as much as we bring in the tools that we have and different strategies and techniques to engage them online. It is important to reflect if learning has actually happened. How successful was your learning experience at all? So with the reflective reports that are generated through Google, you get a better understanding of it. And also the work that goes behind creating a learning experience actually pushes most of us to think if a particular video on YouTube is of any use at all, and if it is, for what really is it going to benefit. So which leads to students. Like I said, students have access to a wide resource of learning materials and tools. They get to share ideas, provide feedback with their teacher and fellow peers. They can receive feedback from their teachers as well. They can keep a track of assignments, classwork, and assessments as well. Participants can also be part of a synchronous and asynchronous sort of engagement through your planning as well. We'll have a look at all of these things that I'm discussing right now through my own Google Classroom in a bit. But it is important for you to brief you all as to what can be expected of it before deep diving into a Google Classroom. Which brings us to parents and guardians. So like I said, the number of tools that you use is the number of times your students are exposed to giving out their personal information. So keeping a tab into how secure they are cannot be done single-handedly by you. You need to bring the most important stakeholder in this whole mapping, that is the parent or the guardian. So even before you set up a Google Classroom, you have a rough idea of the tools that you're going to use, and you need to inform the parents as to how the students are going to learn, where are the accounts that have to be created. So it's not just that in terms of making them aware, but also engaging them in terms of, supposing I have young learners in the primary section, I can get them to sort of pitch in to help them sort of mediate to find out that portal and engage in a live session, let's say. So you can give them performance reports for their children. You could also give them access to the learning designs that you're creating. You can receive information from their end, supposing they have an issue from your side or they want to discuss certain things. You can also provide, like I've mentioned here, provide consent forms in terms of if there's a virtual setup, consent to allow the child to switch on the camera, switch off the camera. So there are a lot of things that you have to really think in terms of creating your virtual setup as a safe space for learning as well, which is why Google Classroom is a wonderful platform to get them into it as well. And lastly, as I mentioned, engage with the teacher. So if you do not have a PTA, you could set up a live PTA session as well. Next is administrators. So if you have a sign up with the G Suite for Education account, there are a number of certifications that teachers can make use of as well. Yes, Google certifies teachers for their work that they do. So you could become a Google trainer or Google innovator. And there are a number of other CPD courses as well. Most importantly, administrators are given exclusive setting preferences that can protect data and also identity of their participants, that is students and teachers. They can manage classes in terms of including or excluding a particular class, definitely manage their employees, that is their teachers, as to who works together, and how they can manage the timetable and all of that happens basically in the administration side. Manage students, permitting students into a classroom with different sections and all that happens at that end. And access to support from the portal. That is a huge support system that Google offers to administrators to troubleshoot any kind of problems that may arise. So I did touch upon very briefly as to what is Google Classroom, how it's accessible, who can use the Google Classroom, and specifically a rough mapping on what exactly do each of these stakeholders get to do online. So for this session, I have created a Google Classroom for us. And this classroom will be available for the next 2 days. So welcome all to our classroom online. Just a minute before I share the screen, I'll just open up the classroom for you. So meanwhile, if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot it in the comment section. I would love to answer them for you. So on your screen, you find the Google Classroom, my Google Classroom. I have set up 3 classes right here. Just a minute, I'll just open the chat box just in case. Okay, there's a question, I suppose. So Sarika asks, yes, we're going to get right there. Sarika will look at how we could do just that. So on your screen, you find 3 classes. You can create a number of classes as per your choice. So when you sign in now, soon after your session on classroom.google.com, you'll find this space empty. So create one. So how do you create a class? Is click on to the add here. So you can join a class. I'll talk about it in a bit, or create a class. Once I create a class, it asks me if I'm part of an educational institution. So right now, I'm just going to click yes for this and continue. So once I do that, I can give in these details and automatically, let's just put a particular. And I just put create, and automatically a class is created in probably at the most 2 minutes. So here we go. We have a classroom that we just created live. Now I have created one already for you. We'll access it in a bit. So let's look at this box right here. So if I click onto classes, I'll find a number of classes that I've created. The calendar gives me an option to schedule engagements in terms of, let's say there's a virtual meeting with the parents, or there's a virtual science experiment that has to be done. I can schedule it and have access to it. Right now, I have nothing as of now on my calendar. I can review my classes in terms of how many participants are in it and how the sessions are going, clicking on it, and you have different classes mentioned right here. Now, unarchived classes are those that, let's say, for instance, you finish off that particular session, like for right before the quarterly or half yearly, or however you divide your sessions, you can archive it and use it the next year as well in terms of your resources and material. So once you're done with that particular class, you can move on and archive it and use it later on. Setting, of course, there's a lot that you can explore, which will definitely take a lot of time if I were to go on it now. A lot of your personal preferences that you can tweak and include accordingly. Now, once we have set our classroom, I've created one right here. This is how our classroom looks like. Now, right here, this is your banner. Now you can select the theme right here. You can either upload a picture of yours, a picture of your students, or your subject, or just simply pick one of these themes. On the screen, you find different themes such as general, English, maths, whatever. It's up to you as to what you choose, and that will be your banner. Like on the left, you have the name of the class, and right here is the Google code. The class code is something that you can customize, one, or else it's automatically generated by the portal, or you could simply not have a code at all. Make a note of this particular code so you can join this class using this code. So I'll just give you a minute to just take a photograph of it. I've put it up in the PPT as well. So just make a note of it. If you have, do type in a yes on the chat box so that I can move on. Okay. Thank you, Premjit. You said yes. I'll wait for 5 yeses before I move on. All right, I put it on the comment section as well. Thank you. So right, so you could download the app and join the class, or just use your laptop and join the class, because I've also included a number of materials that you can access. So with this Google class code, it ensures that you filter out who gets to join your class as such. So like I said, Google class code can be customized. It can be auto-generated by the portal, or you need not have a code at all. So that's with the banner. Now, right here, you see these options: stream, classwork, people, and grades. Now, what you see on screen is the stream. This is where you get to send out information in terms of assignments, activities, tasks, or any sort of announcements that you want to make to your students. Now, the moment you do this, it will ping on their phone or their device that I have sent a particular task. Now we'll test it out later after this session. Probably towards the end of the day, I'll ping all of you all if you've joined the class, and you'll get to know how exactly it happens. Now let's say I type in here, so right here, as soon as let's have a look at it again. So right here, you can choose any of the classes that you want. I'm going to send a message to our classroom. And right here is where you can do a lot of your differentiation. Right here, you can see as it is, there are a number of names that have popped up, right? So when we speak about differentiated instruction, it simply means that you work your way through creating, let's say, an activity according to the competency level of the learner, focusing on their strengths, focusing on the areas that need work. So if I have a resource, I can divide it for students who can be challenged a bit more, and also to students exclusively who might need a different way to probably get them engaged and give them bite-sized information. So I can click on all students, or specifically to a few students that I'd want to click. So right here, I'm just clicking the first 3 names. So I can communicate just exclusively to them. So like I said, communicate assessments, assignments, announcements, or even an instruction for a task. So I'm going to just say hello here. So supposing if you have logged in, you would get the ping automatically, but I'm sure you can take your time after the session. So once I've given my message here, I've chosen the class and the students I want to communicate to, I can add different kinds of resources. So no matter what you create on the Google Classroom, it automatically generates a folder on your Google Drive. And that folder on Google Drive would be called MNET Google Classroom folder. So it will be stored right there. So I can go to my Google Drive and probably pick up any of the resources that I've generated there, or add in a link, probably from a website, or probably a PDF file that is available online. So you could go ahead and shift the link here, You could also add a file from, if it's available offline on your desktop, you could upload it right here, or even for that matter, YouTube. Like, let's just say origami. Let's create a task now, right now. What comes to my mind is origami. I ask Google to search for it. And I have a huge list of videos right here. I click on the first video right here, and it immediately gets embedded. And I can give an instruction, or look at the video and frame 5 instructions in. I can give the timestamp right here if I want. And then all I have to do is just post. So the video is available right here. I can give them a worksheet through my Google Drive, or just attach a file if it's available on my desktop. So this is how you can do, but ensure that you give information not just about the task. Do make a mention of when they're supposed to submit it and how they're supposed to submit it. Are you going to give them an option to send a Word file, if it is a Word file, if it is a PDF, or if you're going to asking them to create a poster through, let's say, an app called Canva, to give those kind of specific inputs right here on your stream. So biology teachers could just take up a video on YouTube or related, let's say, the heart, and give them a worksheet along with this. You could also embed Google Forms right here for an assessment. Now, there are a couple of assessments that I have given. So if you go onto the Google Classroom itself, you can see you're getting a lot of comments right here. Yes. So fantastic. Some of you have already started communicating with me right here. So which gives you a sense of how you can get in touch with the teacher, isn't it? So as a teacher, I can move your comment to the top. Maybe I could have asked my students to comment on the video itself. I can also delete comments, and most importantly, mute. Sanjeev sir, please take no offense. I'm just clicking onto this. So I can also mute those naughty students who are like digressing from the topic right here. So once that is done, you could have a wholesome understanding of if someone is struggling with a task, not able to open the link or whatever it is. And definitely they can go onto the platform like I've given. Let's look at the first one right here. There's information on a couple of links. So if you click onto any of this link, it will lead you to, let's say I put in a link over here for apps that work with the classroom. So all you have to do is just click on the link. So do have a look at all these links. I will touch base on most of it in a bit, but there are 6 links that is jam-packed with mini tutorials on how to navigate through Google Classroom as well. So let's just, yes, so Sarayu ma'am has also touched base on the fact that students may not be able to open YouTube sometimes. Yes, YouTube may have an age barrier. Now, YouTube can be downloaded in 2 forms. One is something that is by default available, but there's something called as YouTube Kids. So if you are engaging with children who are, and not college students because they come to my mind as well. So if you're engaging with children, young children, it's better that you use YouTube Kids because most of the content right there is filtered out. So Sarika says, do we have to post and schedule question paper under the heading? Yes, it absolutely. So basically a stream is an announcement board. You're announcing them what exactly is happening, what is expected of them, and when they have to perform and probably submit a response. So if it is set test, just say, hello, everybody, welcome to a test or a quiz. And you could put a link of Kahoot right there, put a link to, let's say, Google Draw right there. So like right here and this particular stream, I've just put in a few links for you. If you go down further, I've kept over here a video that I've attached and also a task. So have a look at the video attached to gain a better understanding. I've highlighted the YouTube channel of Google Classroom in it as well. So this is what you could do on the stream where you make announcements and also create tasks and assessments. Now with the classwork, if you click onto the classwork, I've kept 2 engagements. One is a quiz, which opens up through Google Forms. So I've assigned 21 students right here. Those who have jumped right into the classroom, fantastic. So the moment they submit their responses through Google Classrooms, I'll get intimated on screen that out of 21, so many people have turned in. So this is how the Google form turned quiz looks like. So this particular quiz is for 5 points, and the moment this is done, you also get evaluated for it. You receive the responses. Suppose if you get 3 out of 5, it will also inform you as to where you went wrong and what the right response is. Now, if you want to have a look, I remember Renu ma'am telling that some of you all wanted to know about Google Forms. We'll just have a brief, quick look at Google Forms. Now, Google Forms is also a free of cost tool offered by Google. This is how it will look. Now, let's say I want to create a pre-test and a post-test. I can do so right here. If I want to get a permission from parents on a particular, let's say a virtual field trip, I can create a Google form here. So basically you can do a lot of things through Google Forms. Let me just make one right now. Is lion a mammal? So what I can do here is I can add a picture. Either I can upload it from my system. I can take a photograph if I have a lion walking around me, or else just go to Google image and just put in lion. Wow, I'm going to put this. It asks me if I want to insert it. I give them permission, yes. So there's a picture of the lion that will pop up in a bit. And right here you have options. Now, either I can give them an option of a short answer, or give them an option to write it in a paragraph, multiple choice questions, or a checklist to check down, or a drop down in terms of different options. You could also give in a linear scale, that yes, maybe, or different kinds of ways of putting in a linear scale, a multiple choice grid, or a checkbox grid. So all of these options to give your students in terms of a quiz or an assessment. You can fix a date and a time and schedule it accordingly as well. Right here, you have a box right here where you can add a video. We have just added an image. You can work with the font. You could also import questions if you have created elsewhere. And right, if I'm done with this, let's say I just give it an option of multiple choice, and the picture comes right here. Option 1, I'd probably put as yes, and option 2 would be no. And I can add an image here as well. And right here is an icon to make it compulsory or not. So you can make out of 10 questions, 5 questions are compulsory for the student to answer. So if I want this question to be answered, it's mandatory, I click required. You can go to these options as well accordingly. If you feel this question is not required, delete it. You could also duplicate the question. So suppose you don't have to retype it all over again. Just so if a mathematics question is there, you could use the same base, but change the numbers accordingly. So duplicate it accordingly, just like that. And once this is done, you're good to go. So this is in brief as to how you can put up a question or a paragraph or different ways of setting up your questions as such through Google Forms. So we go back to our classroom, and apart from that, I've given you all another activity using Google Draw. Now, Google Draw is a wonderful platform where students can create mind maps. They can create flow charts and different ways of making visual material for their learning. So I've created one particular template here on your core strengths of a teacher. So this particular tool can be given exclusively for each student, or I can give it to all students, or I can ask a set of 3 students to work on it as well. So that way you can differentiate your instruction. I've just given generic questions for you all to get a basic understanding. So do have a look at Google Draw as well. So we have a question right here. How can students be informed that they have received the assignment? So Krishna sir, the moment you feed it onto the screen, they get an update on their device. So if they've signed up through their mobile phone, there's just like how you're intimated when an SMS is in your inbox, they get an intimation as well that let's say Geeta ma'am has included an assignment, Geeta ma'am has included an assessment, Geeta ma'am has an announcement. So they get that pop-up on their device. Thank you, Brinjit sir. So do get into the Google Classroom, have a look at it. Google Drawings and Google Forms are the two tasks that I've put under Classwork. As a teacher, I get to see different students, fantastic. Let me go to Renu ma'am right here. So I get to see her photograph right here. And also I can email her separately right here. Now on this email, maybe I can have give her a closer analysis of her performance or provide additional support if she requires. Now right here you find teachers. If I click onto this, I can invite a fellow teacher or a collaborator to come on board and co-create a learning experience. So right here on teachers, it's not just for students, but other collaborators. Maybe you have someone from the administration who wants to have a closer look of your material and engage with the students. They could do so right here. Now this is a section for grades. Right now, since I have not given any tests as such, you won't find a lot of data on it. But when I spoke about reflective practice, it comes right here. This is valuable data in terms of learner engagement. How many took time to give in their response? How many were correct? How many were able to access it immediately, which will give me an information that maybe I should not be using that particular tool, or maybe I should be using that particular tool. So a lot of deep understanding in terms of your practice comes right here. So like they often say, any assessment is not exclusively for the student as such. It is an assessment for the teacher to get a deeper understanding on her practice and skill set. So something that can be made possible through this platform. I'll also touch about assessments in a bit. So this is how you will see your students. And like I said, you could get their grades right here. I set 2 tasks. So I've also graded them. So I'll get to know of it and get back to them and their parents as well. So Vinita ma'am, the moment you finish an assignment, when I've shared a particular quiz, right, on Google Forms, the moment you finish that, I get a feedback from my end that you have completed, how many questions were right and how many were wrong. So I get intimated by my end as well. Yes, you could give the descriptive questions because you have that option on Google Forms. Of course, you cannot ask them for lengthy answers, but given the tools that you have, I think you can make use of those tools and not just bank on those really long essays of responses unless it is like really required. So with that being said, we'll go back. We touched on grades as well, right? So we go back to the stream. So I'm hoping that you have a look at the classroom and just have your way around it. I'll leave it open for the next 2-3 days. Go have a look at the links that I've shared. We can definitely keep in touch for the next 2 days on this platform. And I go back to my PPT. Now, this particular PPT was created using canva.com. Canva.com is a fantastic platform where you don't just create PPTs. Teachers can create worksheets. They can create. They have options to create posters and portfolios. So when you think about descriptive questions, you could also challenge your students if they, of course, if it has to be age appropriate, that they can create a poster on Canva. They can create a pamphlet on Canva. They can do just so much more right here. So once I've created this PPT, I can, if you have a look right here, Roshni ma'am says, how do we correct? Yes. So when you set up something like a descriptive question, you can provide immediate feedback to them. Like right now, I do not have any responses as such given. So otherwise, I can give them feedback, type in the feedback right next to the question itself. So even when it comes to Google Drive, any tool that you use on Google will give you an option to give immediate feedback right there. Type in how their performance was, and how they can improvise it, and what you found really good. And since I've given 5 points, so that also gives you an indicator that they've got 4 responses right out of 5. So you have a numerical way of assessing them as well as giving them feedback. So it is a wholesome way of assessing student work. Absolutely. I think the strength of any tool as such lies exclusively on the instructions that you give, because students need to know what exactly is expected of them. Right. So I go back to my PPT. So like I was saying, I created this particular PPT here. I can embed it into my Google Drive as such. So I'm not going to open my Google Drive right here. So I can share it. Once I've done it here, I can embed it on my Google Slides, and it's available right there, and I can present it, share the PPT with my students as well. So I can do embed 30 third-party apps as well. So we'll go back to presenting it. Okay. So thank you all for some of you who have joined our classroom. So like I said, if you have a Google account, you by default have access to a number of fantastic tools that are available on Google. I mean, I think all of it is free of cost. So feel free to use. Jenny, Canva is partially free. So there are certain, let's say, images. Some of it you'll find it free of cost, and some of it isn't. But you can make do of the free account itself, because most of it is available for teachers. Most of the tools, images, videos, all of it is free of cost. So test waters right there before going in for a full-time sort of membership. And I think Sarayu ma'am gave a fantastic tip for teachers the last time, where 2 to 3 teachers can have one membership. So you can work together through one account. I'm just hoping that the people at Canva don't listen right now, but you could work with other fellow teachers and have a joint membership account. So going back to the session, thank you, Rajesh sir. So you have access to not just YouTube, but a number of Google tools. One of the tools is Google Classroom, and all these tools can be embedded into your Google Classroom. Let's say a geography teacher can embed Google Earth. You could embed your Google Photos that are exclusively of your classroom and your school right here. So embed all of that. And for your lessons, Google for Education has a web page called G Suite Marketplace. Now, if you go to the Google Classroom, I have a link to the marketplace itself, or just type in marketplace, your marketplace, and you will get it. So once you get there, every single day you have an update of some fantastic tools. So you want to make a mind map. Biology teachers want a virtual way of teaching the model of the heart. I have no clue why the heart pops up, but yes, you have those tools readily available. All you just have to do is click it. So on the left, you'll find these wonderful, let's say what menus. So you have business tools. Now, when you look at the title business tools, don't shy away thinking it has nothing to do with you. I think most of it can be used for teachers. You have productivity tools in terms of creative tools, how to create some fantastic PPTs. PPT, once you create a PPT, you can send the PPT to your students and ask them to fill in their responses. PPTs can be used for assessments as well. So like let's just say an English teacher creates a PPT with a few images. She can send it out to all her students and tell them to use a certain chunk of vocabulary to come up with a story. So imagine the number of stories with one common PPT that can be generated, right? Or a biology teacher can put in different pictures and ask as groups to do a virtual presentation through Google Hangout using that particular PPT. So the sky is the limit. Think of different ways of engaging them. Going back to this particular menu bar, along with productivity, you have education. So you have some amazing tools right here as well. All these tools are third-party apps which can be embedded. And you can just have a go at it whenever you find time. So you have a huge pool right here. So make the best use of it. So once that's done with the number of tools in creating a lesson, you can get an exclusive access to grade books. Grade books in terms for your formative assessments, in terms of little tasks that you create throughout the year or throughout the term. Like I said, there's a bit of information on the screen. I'll give you a minute to just have a look at it before we proceed. If you have had a look at it, just give me a yes in the chat box and I will proceed. All right. So you have access to these links through the Google Classroom. So do have a look at it. We did have a small look at it, like briefly, very briefly, in our classroom, right? Where you saw the name list and how many of you all have answered and stuff. So you get a grade book. Now this grade book can be shared with fellow teachers, administrators, and also a particular, if I'm supposing just choosing one student, I can share it to their parent or guardian. So all of that, the summary of the grade book that comes in can be mapped as grade reports towards the end, where you get a colorful representation of through pie charts and all those tools that you required for that data. So you have all of that. I think you can make the best use of it, because a number, to a very great extent, the teacher load is actually minimized. Yes, a lot of teacher load is minimized because it's all auto-generated and it's foolproof. There are no errors as such that's made, provided that you give a concrete way of assessing. On Google Classroom, you can create your own template for assessments as well, in terms of how much marks are you going to be giving for certain stages within the task itself. So there's a very microscopic view of performance. So if I'm giving you a video on YouTube, I will assess them in terms of the number. Let's say I ask them to get a word pool of 5 verbs, 5 adjectives, and after watching the video, so each word carries 1 mark. And for spelling mistakes, half a mark is reduced. So a lot of things like that can be done. So we've reached the end of today's session. I've mentioned the class code right here. Do type in this particular code to join in the class. I'd love to see some interaction there, and do reach out if you need any sort of support from my end. I'll do my best based on my experience as to how to make a fantastic virtual class. Thank you so much for that active participation through the chat. It was greatly motivating to see a lot of excited teachers there. Thank you, INET and MNET, for this wonderful opportunity. Special thanks to Sarayu ma'am for sort of co-facilitating this session as well. So with that, we reach the end. If you have any questions, please do raise them in the chat box. I would love to clarify them. Thank you.
Participants, you have any question?
I see a question by Tosha ma'am. She says, Purnima ma'am, do we have an option to monitor students? I'm assuming monitor them in terms of if they've submitted tasks on time, if they're taking some time at all. So I'm not quite sure as to what exactly are you specifying right here. Tosha ma'am, if you could just provide clarity on that. How about students' attendance? So a simple way of doing it is the number of responses that I've got. So it means that they've attended that particular task and attended to it, and they've responded to it. On a live session, of course, you get in the details of the logins that you get to be aware of towards the end. So that would be attendance in a virtual setup, isn't it? Whether they complete the task or not. Can we use Google Classroom without? Absolutely, you can use Google Classroom without the G Suite. There's not much of a difference. It's just that there are auto usernames that are generated. So they don't have to bank on their parents for their email IDs, and a number of other privacy settings as well that they get. Yes. Rayu ma'am says that yes, Google Meet does give an extension of attendance. Most welcome. Sanjay sir, any other questions as such? Yes, I think for any virtual setup, you need to have a pretty decent net connection, isn't it, Roshni ma'am? So it doesn't exclusively, fall on Google Classroom itself. And if you can make use of downloadable content, it's even great, isn't it? So they don't have to be online all the time. Any more questions?
Yeah, thank you very much, Purnima ma'am. Renu ma'am?
Any question from YouTube, sir?
Not many relevant questions are there. There are generic questions, and these questions are addressed already by Purnima ma'am.
Okay.
Aditi, can we have you on audio?
Good evening, everyone. On the behalf of the members of MNET, I would like to thank Dr. Purnima for volunteering her time and providing us with such a knowledgeable and entertaining presentation on the topic of Google Classroom. The topic explained by her is definitely going to be of immense help to the teachers for designing curated lesson plans, resources, activities, projects, tasks, assessments, performance reports, and feedbacks through the platform of Google Classroom. I would also like to appreciate the constant efforts of Mr. Nadeem Khan for providing the necessary technical support to MNET. Many thanks to the host and convener, Mrs. Renu Thotre, for organizing this extremely insightful session for all the teachers. These workshops have enabled the teachers to stay updated with the latest methods and tools in varied areas of teaching, which can be utilized by them in the classroom as well as for online teaching purposes. The Learn from Home series for the teachers has enabled the teachers to also learn a lot of online platforms in order to which can facilitate them to teach the students through their homes. I would like to extend our thanks to the participants from various countries for effectively participating in the various MNET workshops held till date. We at MNET appreciate the positive feedback obtained from all the participants and look forward to such enthusiasm from them in the future as well. Once again, a huge thanks to everyone. And as we say, knowledge shared is knowledge squared. So request everyone to share these knowledgeable videos to all the teachers and students and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditi. And thank you, Purnima ma'am. This was really a very interactive session. And for the feedback form, I'll post this on the Facebook page. My Facebook page link is already given in the poster. Maybe in a couple of minutes, I'll post it. You all can go over there, visit that page, and fill in the feedback form. And thank you, Nadeem, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for the wonderful opportunity. And thanks to all the participants for their time and engagement.
And thank you for the classroom.